What's up guys, XHOUNDISHx here, and today we have the pick of the week. We're going to jump in and take a look at the Parthian shot vendor role available for this week, which is week 6, the 2nd of March, and this comes from the Vanguard Quartermaster. Firstly though, of course, we do have a God role palindrome available for this week. It is an absolute blinder of a role, but that one has been covered a lot by other people, and I've spoken about the palindrome a lot before as well, so I wanted to try Parthian shot because the role on this is pretty fantastic this week. Firstly though, let's talk about Parthian shot a little bit. It's in the low rate of fire, high impact category of pulse rifles at 59 rate of fire and 30 impact. It features solid base range, stability and magazine size, but one of the key things about the weapon is its very mild recoil pattern, which does allow you to opt for a wider variety of perks than say with something like spare change, which is really forced to focus on stability. Stability is, however, still pretty important for this class of pulse rifles, as you do want to hit your shots. It is absolutely capable of 2-bursting targets fairly regularly in PvP, but stability will be somewhat important to do this, and so the role this week is pretty nice. We've got the MD Reflex, Steady Hand IS and OEG rifle scopes. MD Reflex feels pretty nice on this weapon. Some folks may prefer Quick Draw IS as the other option, but Steady Hand or MD Reflex are pretty good. In the first perk column, we have Rodeo or Feeding Frenzy. So Rodeo reduces the side-to-side recoil, which isn't a huge issue on this weapon. The Parthian shot in general has pretty good stability, and there isn't anything overly severe about the recoil, but opting for Rodeo will give you incredibly low recoil, so it is a legitimate option. I prefer to use Feeding Frenzy on this role though. The improved reload speed is really beneficial across the board. Something like Outlaw would have been nice, but with Feeding Frenzy you get a reload speed increase on any kill, so it's a pretty good perk. Moving to the middle column, we have Handlaid Stock for increased stability at the expense of range, or Lightweight for 2x character agility. Handlaid Stock is the obvious choice here. You're going to bump that stability up by a fair amount, which is good because again, landing your shots is very important. The slight loss of range is a shame. Perfect Balance could maybe do a little bit better considering that we have all these recoil perks as well. Nonetheless though, it's still one of the premier perk options. Finally though, we have Counterbalance, and this will make the recoil and the spread of the rounds from the weapon more vertical. Combined with Rodeo, it's going to be an absolute laser beam, but even working on its own, it will make the recoil about as manageable as it could possibly be, again because of the inherently low recoil that the weapon has. Things like Head Seeker are definitely beneficial on this class of pulse rifle, and it would have been a nice perk on this particular role with Handlaid Stock doing a lot of the work for stability. Otherwise though, this is one of the best roles that you could possibly get. This thing handles like a dream in PvP. Like I said, I'm using Feeding Frenzy and then Counterbalance, and stability wise you'll have no issues with this particular weapon. It does still kick up a little bit, and you'll need to spend some time with the weapon to get used to controlling that recoil. You have to compensate for the kick as you fire, but it is very minimal. Any players who are used to using low rate of fire pulse rifles would definitely notice how much of a laser beam this role is. Again, Feeding Frenzy, really nice option to go with. The increased reload is generally pretty useful, and you don't have to get headshot kills to benefit from it, and there are a number of situations where having this bonus can get you back into the fight. The MD Reflex scope feels pretty good on this weapon. Handling and target acquisition wise, you can't really complain. I also prefer the MD Reflex over the standard Reflex and most other scopes, to be honest, because the aperture is really good. It's a clean, wide open sight, which I personally quite like. When you're using Parthian shot though, it is a medium and kind of long-medium range beast. If you're hitting your crits, it really packs a punch, and of course, like I said, you can get those 2-burst kills. You'll get really comfortable 3-burst kills in that optimum range. Of course, the further you are away, the harder 2 or even 3-burst kills become. So while this type of pulse rifle does have a lot of range, you can't afford to kind of treat it like a scout rifle or anything like that. This role in particular does lose some range with Handlaid Stock, and that is noticeable when you get into those longer range engagements, but it's not a massive difference from what we would see with the base range. With this being a low rate of fire weapon though, if you're not making 2-burst kills, the time to kill is pretty lengthy. But again, you have to respect the class of weapon and play a little bit differently. It's a fantastic 6s weapon because you have, higher player traffic, but it's also really good at team shooting. You'll get a bunch of assists as you move with the group, but you'll also get a lot of cleanup kills. So while Parthian shot is isn't the best head-to-head gunfighting weapon, it's one of the more suppressive and obnoxious weapons in the game when you play to its strengths, especially with teamfire and things like that. So this is a pretty great example of a Parthian shot this week, guys. It's not my favorite class of pulse rifle in the game, but it is very fun to use, and it can really do some work in the right kind of maps and in the right situations. To briefly mention PvE though, the weapon is usable. Feeding Frenzy is also a pretty nice option there, but honestly, the better archetype for PvP is the next one up, the Red Death or the 66 rate of fire archetype, as the balance of damage and rate of fire is much better, and there are just generally much better PvE pulse rifles outside of this low rate of fire archetype. Either way though, for PvP, Parthian shot is pretty awesome. So those are my thoughts on the Parthian shot for this week, guys. There have been a couple of good rolls of this since Age of Triumph, so let me know which ones you've used or any lucky drops that you had on the Parthian shot or the spare change. But if you have enjoyed the video, a like below is appreciated. If you're new to the channel, feel free to hit subscribe to see a lot more Destiny content, but for now, you have an awesome day.